I'm going to show you how to do a bird nest helper program for schools, and it's involving a little bit of recycling education and education about wildlife, as well as an upcycle project. And the way I got the idea for this program is I won one of these bird nest helpers at an event, and I thought that's a super simple idea to just upcycle some stuff, some organic material like some cotton string and wool, and then make a bird nest helper with like a mesh produce bag. So you're going to want some mesh produce bags, like I mentioned, and then you're also going to want a book. I like Garbage Guts. It just does a good job of explaining why animals come into contact with our plastic and what can happen when they do come into contact with our trash. So this is the book I'd recommend for it. So what I do when I go in there is I obviously introduce myself, and then we talk about recycling. We hit the major materials that we recycle at home, so the paper, the metal, the glass, and then of course plastic. And I go into, explaining the symbol, the recycling symbol to the students, which plastics can be recycled in their county, what numbers, and then when we don't recycle things, where do they end up? Well, sometimes they end up in the landfill, but sometimes they get littered along the way or before they can make it to the trash even. And so when we litter things, animals come into contact with that waste, and sometimes it might smell like food and they may end up getting stuck in it. They may try to eat it. Obviously, it's just not a good thing when wildlife comes into contact with our waste. And so the first thing I do after introducing recycling, usually the kids have a pretty good idea, so it's just a refresher. If they're old enough, I may show them a few pictures. If they're too young and I think it may scare them, then I'll just go right into the book. And the book is about the Midway Atoll, and Midway is an island in the Pacific Ocean. There's no civilization on it, like in terms of a settlement. There is fish and wildlife from the United States living there to monitor it, but there's no shopping malls, there's no grocery stores there, but they still end up with thousands, if not billions, pieces of plastic that get washed ashore on the island, mannequins, umbrellas. It's very sad but interesting. You could watch, there's a CNN video or documentary on it on YouTube called Midway, the Plastic Island, and I would recommend watching that before you go ahead and do this program. If you are doing this program with 6th grade or older, you may consider, instead of using this book, using that documentary and just showing about the first 7 minutes of it that explains the science and it explains what's going on without getting too graphic. So I think it's about the first 7 minutes of it, but definitely preview it before you use it. So this book, though, is really great. It's written by a PhD professor who has studied, what's going on Midway and what's happening to the albatross, which is a population of birds that live there, and they're being killed in great numbers because they're actually consuming the plastic that's washing up on those shores. So that's the book that I would go through and read after you've kind of reviewed what recycling is and why you would want to recycle your plastics. So then once you've done that, you just want to highlight that animals can't always tell the difference between something that's natural, like a stick or a feather, another, just whatever might be natural, grass, and then something that's not natural, like our waste. Maybe they'll mix up a stick and a straw, so you just never know. I have a picture of a hermit crab living in a bottle cap. So things like that, you just want to highlight it, and then you want to send the kids out before you start building the bird nest helper in your mesh produce bag. You want to send the kids out to collect things that they think are natural and that birds would use to build their nest naturally. If humans weren't around, what would the birds be using? So you want, and then of course if they find trash, you want to tell them to pick it up. But for the bird nest helper at this point, they just want to be collecting some flexible twigs, any dried grass maybe that they see, just anything natural. Maybe if there's like some leaves, they will probably collect those. You may not want to put them in here, but definitely some twigs and some pine needles, things like that. So you'll go back to the classroom after the kids have gone outside, and if you can't send the kids outside, if it's winter, that's okay too, because you're going to supplement those items with some natural materials like wool, yarn that's 100% wool or 100% cotton. Obviously this is dyed, but it's still cotton, 100% cotton and wool, so it's going to be biodegradable. It's really important that you're using things that's biodegradable. Also, you might want to use shredded paper. Obviously it's not going to be super sturdy for the bird's nest, but it's still helpful. So then you would put in some of the natural material that they collected, and then you would put in this man-made material, and you would really just drive home the point that a bird's not going to be able to tell the difference. And if it can't tell the difference for the material that's man-made versus natural when it's building its nest, it's probably not going to be able to tell the difference when it's trying to eat its food or find another animal trying to find a home. May not be able to tell the difference. So that'll really drive home that point, in that we want to make sure we recycle instead of just letting our trash end up in a landfill where a bird may come into contact with it, or even worse, if it were to get littered. We don't want that to happen. So then you will take a zip tie and you'll kind of bunch that top up of your mesh produce bag, and then just weave your zip tie through the top, and it should stick really well. And then you would close your zip tie at the top. And you don't need to do a mesh produce bag for every student. You could do just one per class, because that's a lot of mesh produce bags, and sometimes it's hard to get enough of them to do one with every student. So if you do one per class, then you're able to just hang it up on the playground, make sure it's secured so it doesn't become litter itself, and have the kids observe it and watch if birds are using it, or if things are starting to disappear from it. Observe, are they preferring the natural things, or do they like things that are maybe bright colored, like the dyed yarn? So just have them observe and write down their observations so that it hits that science standard. So that is the Bird Nest Helpers program, and feel free to put your own spin on it.